Howdy, and welcome back for part 2 of the Building Partnerships for Community Youth Development, a CCOR YDI production.
So in terms of taking those steps for partnership success, Falardo and others in our work up in Chicago have suggested that the first steps that need to be taken is developing policy, cultural, system, and operational framework that supports community partnerships and provides facilities and services for youth. And that is that we make an intentional decision within our communities and our organizations that we're going to develop the social contract that means the assumed way of providing services for youth is not by individual organizations, but it's that all of us together have formed this network, this coalition, that anytime there's issues related to youth, this is the group that responds to them. And it's public-private, it's multiple organizations, and it's that we come together, we look at this problem now, who has the resources, who has the expertise, how do we address this problem? And so that through all sectors, these needs are addressed in this way, rather than that we're sort of thinking about it as individual organizations working separately, even if we're all kind of on the same page. And so it really sort of suggests a model that all in this together, in this community, in this neighborhood, if I walk into an organization that is providing after-school sports, but I have questions related to teen pregnancy prevention, that someone there is going to have information that can take me, that can lead me to the right place. And so that we're all sort of developing this network. If there's an issue comes up in our community relative to youth and drug use or suicide or something, that the powers that be in the community know that we need to go and talk to the group, the coalition, if you will, of partners in our community that are focused on the health and well-being of youth, and therefore this is the group we have to turn to. We have to have all these people at the table. And so in many cases it starts, this idea that the partnership should start with the community needs, not solutions. Not that we're not all doing very good things for our youth, but it's that we're coming together at the very beginning of identifying needs, and that we're willing to be a partner even though the solution to this problem may not involve my organization. But we're coming together to ensure that we're part of this process that needs are addressed through this coalition. And it often does involve a willingness to relinquish control of some operational aspects, to give up in some cases that we are, someone else may be able to do this side of things better, and sort of piece off some aspects of programs and services to other organizations. And that's not always an easy thing to do. So, for example, going back to my initial example of walking into the after-school basketball program with a teen pregnancy issue, I mean that requires that the health organization in town that's really focused on teen pregnancy prevention to train and trust professionals working at the after-school basketball program to be able to handle that information sensitively and the right way that they want them to. And so rather than say nothing. And so I think that those are the types of conversations that have to go on in this process. And also a clear understanding of everyone's role in this process is important. And so what the process looks like, a very, very simplistic approach to this process, if you're going to walk through some of these things the right way, is starting with engaging stakeholders. And I think that the research is also suggesting increasingly that stakeholders need to have a much earlier role in this process. And that is, if we're going to sort of effectively approach issues in our communities, we have to start with understanding the problem from the point of view of those stakeholders, so parents and youth and political leaders, etc., that kind of have a handle on the community, and starting with them, what are the major issues? What are the things that our organizations collectively need to be focused on if indeed we're going to create an environment that supports youth in our community? And so once those community needs are identified through that stakeholder engagement process, then we start the mapping of potential resources and partners across the community. Once that's done, ensuring that we've got alignment in partnerships and mission and culture, and that we're culturally competent with each other, and that everybody has the ability to do what they say they're going to do, right? So making sure that the capacity is high. And then developing advisory boards. And this is a step that we often forget about, is that if we're thinking about bringing organizations together, one of the best ways to ensure that we continue to focus on the things we should be doing through the partnership is to develop advisory boards, community advisory boards, stakeholder advisory boards across multiple organizations, in addition to our coalitions or anything, but have these advisory boards so that we can bounce ideas off of. Being sure you formalize partnerships. If it's not written down, it often won't get handled. So making sure you're formalizing those partnerships and taking time to evaluate those partnerships and making sure that if it is working, great. But if it's not working, you're taking the steps to make it work better. And so I'll close with a case study example in Ashe County, North Carolina, which is an organization. It's an area which I did some work in a couple of years ago, and to me it provides a good example of where some of these partnerships can work. Ashe County is a small rural county in the western part of North Carolina, and it's fairly typical in many ways of the rural community. But one of the things that they've done there is they've started developing this social contract with the community. And that's been largely driven by a couple of different entities and 4-H. I should back up. And the example is the Ashe County 4-H After School and Summer Parks program. And so you've got an identified need in this rural community for an after-school program. And there was... it was going to be hard for any one entity to provide this program to the youth of the county. And so, and it really epitomizes in many ways the social contract that the county seems to have. And first of all, there are multiple partners, of course. 4-H provides staff and provides programs. The school provides space, equipment, and transportation, in terms of activity buses, as well as some programs. The county government picked up the legal liability, as well as maintenance and repair funding, and as well as providing some facilities and programs to the Parks and Recreation Department. And then lastly, you've got churches and other community organizations that are involved in terms of providing facilities, doing fundraising, as well as providing some transportation to some events using church vans, church buses, etc. And the reason why I use this example is that the coalition was put together in response to need, not necessarily in terms of trying to get external funding, but through this partnership, they've been able to respond to other ongoing needs as they've come up, and they've been able to provide other. So, for example, when Ashe County. A report came out that rated Ashe County as one of the highest suicide rates in the United States. That this was the coalition that the community turned to that says, okay, we know we have this problem with youth in our county. This is the group that has come together that knows youth. And so regardless of the organization, this was the coalition that could be counted on to help come up with solutions to these issues. And so by making themselves valuable in this way, that they were able to really reach the entire county and our community in many ways to respond. And so another example was when there was this community pool that was part of the middle school in the county, and it was condemned by the building inspector. And so in many cases in a rural county like this, a lot of people would throw up their arms and say, well, that's that. We don't have a pool anymore. But going back, this coalition came together and said, they said, absolutely, we've got to have this pool. Our kids, this is where they learn how to swim. This is how we prevent drowning in our county. And so this same coalition, even though it wasn't necessarily after school program, but this was the group that came together and said, we've got to find a solution. Now, who do we talk to? How do we raise money? And so the coalition was now in place to respond to these needs. And this is how this sort of culture becomes developed over time, that as you begin to trust these organizations and work together on different solutions, and then you can respond in different ways, and it's not just focused on one single item, one single program, or one single problem in your county. And so I think that's sort of where this process kind of leads to. So again, that's a very quick nutshell sort of conversation starter as it relates to partnerships. This is something that takes time. It's something that takes a lot of time and energy to cultivate. The important lessons that I would suggest to remember was that start getting to know the potential partners in your community now. So as you start going through your needs analysis, you start engaging with your stakeholders, you can begin to identify those opportunities to put together these partnerships for long-term sustainability. Again, think about the example of marriage in this case. This is not something where you want to think about it in short term and response to some external need, but something that is cultivated and built over time, and almost a real relationship with these organizations that can respond to the most important needs of youth in your community. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us, and we'll hopefully can expand upon any questions that you have.